So now that we have our piece of lumber ready to go, it's cleaned up, it's to size, I need to jump into Adobe Illustrator to start creating the graphic that I'm going to engrave on this piece of wood. Now, before I jump into that, one thing that I need to take into account is a routed edge. So like here you have a nice fancy routed edge on this sign that I made, and then on the one that I'm using for this demo, I just did a little chamfer around the edge. Now, I don't want to include that in the size of the new file that I'm going to make in Adobe Illustrator because I don't want to engrave along that routed edge. So I need to measure that distance and that distance to ensure that I don't engrave on the routed edge. And I believe mine happened to be, it was 7 5/8 by 7 5/8. So now let's go ahead and jump into Illustrator. So once I go ahead and open up Adobe Illustrator, I'm going to do a file. So, oops, I already did it, but you're going to click File and then go to New. And then after you get this new document window that pops up, they have some different options. I'm going to go to Print. To be 100% honest, I know that these have different presets, but I always just go to Print. Again, this is where it comes into play that I am not a pro at this. I kind of just taught myself, so I'm going to use the print option. I'm going to change my units to inches, and then now I'm going to type in the size that I just measured a minute ago with those routed edges. And for me, that was 7 5/8, so that's 7.625 by 7.625, and then I'm going to hit Create. So then that creates my artboard for me. And now I'm pretty much ready to go. So this is the space that I have to work in. And if you remember, I said that I was going to use the Steelman logo. So this is where you're going to pull your logo from wherever. Maybe you made it by hand, maybe you grabbed it off the internet, but you want to go ahead and file place in. Where's place? There it is. Shift Control P is your keyboard shortcut. So I'm going to file place in my design. So I'm going to grab my logo wherever I have it saved. And I normally just like to click this top left corner. It snaps the design into that. For some reason, I'm in the text tool. I'm going to click off of that. I want to be on the selection tool up here. And I want to start to size this thing up and kind of move it in the location that I want it. If you hover over the corner of this, you could rotate if you wanted to. Control Z will undo. If you hover over a corner, you can move it, or you can, if you bring it right along the edge, you can see the little arrows to make it bigger or smaller. If you want to keep it proportional, which I highly recommend, hold down the Shift key as you grab the corner and drag your mouse. Holding the Shift will keep it proportional and the original size. So you want to roughly get it about the size that you want, and then if you left click hold the graphic, you can move it around. Now if you want to snap it perfectly to center, it will locate that center for you as you're moving. So right there is my center. I'm going to click on this. It looks, I know it says it's snapped to center, but you also want to eye this up a little bit. You can use the arrows on your mouse, or not on your mouse, on your keyboard to go ahead and move this. I'm going to actually move it up because if you remember, I want some text underneath my Steelman, so I want to give some room down there for my text that I'm going to add down here. And the other thing, I'm going to go a little bit to the right here. How does that look? That looks pretty good. Now, the only problem that you're going to find when grabbing images off the internet, if you zoom in, you roll, actually hold Alt on the keyboard and roll your mouse wheel forward. That's to zoom in. You're going to notice that the edge of your graphics typically are really choppy and blurry. That's because this is not a vector image. So if you don't grab a good vector image, something like this, we don't want to see that when it's laser cut, so there is a way in Illustrator to clean this up. So that's what I'm going to do next. So to do that, you're going to left click on the graphic, and then you're going to go to Image Trace. Now if Image Trace doesn't show up over here, it may also be, I thought it was under Oh, it's under Object. It's also down here. So whichever, sometimes this tool doesn't pop up for some people, but Object and then Image Trace. I like to keep mine right over here. So once I click on Image Trace, there are some different options. Typically the one that I always use is either just the default or a black and white logo. I haven't really dove into the other ones yet. So I'm going to go black and white. I may get this window that pops up and I just click OK. As soon as I do that, now if I hold Alt on the keyboard and scroll my mouse wheel forward again, notice how it cleaned up the edge. So it has now converted that graphic into a vector image, which has really smoothed out those edges for me. And with my laser cutter, and most typical laser cutters, the black here represents what is going to be engraved or burned into the wood with the laser cutter. Now, sometimes when you have a graphic like this, you may see a little edge or a black edge around the graphic. So sometimes you need to dive into this graphic specifically and do some more editing. So if you double click on it, whoops, I'm sorry, I'm going to click off of it. If you click on it once and then hit expand, expand will open up all the paths that have been created for this graphic, and you'll notice that there is a border around this one. So right now I'm specifically working in this graphic along with all the vectors. So I can click on this path just by left clicking it once, and I can hit delete if yours has a border around it. Again, so I think I need to double click on it. There we go. Double click. I can click on the edge, and then I can delete the path around the edge. So hold on, let me do that one more time in case I lost you. So double click off here into gray space. I'm going to click on the graphic once. You may have to hit expand, and then I'm going to double click on it, and then I left click once on the path on the outside. Notice how it says path, and notice how that only has the boxes around it, and I can delete. So that's how you can get rid of maybe some things that you don't want. Like for example, if I hold Alt and zoom in here, maybe I don't want this. I could delete specific things maybe out that I don't want. So again, I clicked on it, I hit expand, I double clicked on it, and I clicked on the things that I want to get rid of. Now if you don't want to be specifically in that anymore, notice this blue box up here. If I double click off here into gray space, I'm now just back in the entire space. I'm not specifically working on, that graphic anymore. So now that I have my graphic, I'm happy with it. I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to go text tool over here on the left hand side. I'm going to left click, hold, and drag a box for roughly, the height and width of the text that I want. It's going to populate some random text in there ready for you. I think it's in a different language. I don't know why, but I'm going to hit backspace to get rid of that. And then up top or even on the right, whichever is your preference, you have your text properties. So you can type in your text. I'm going to do all caps here. And I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to center it up. And then I'm going to bring up the size a little bit. And let's pick a font maybe here. I'm going to pause the video so you don't have to sit here and watch me pick fonts. And I decided to go with this Bell font. Maybe I'll go a little bit bolder there. I do want to make this text box a little bit bigger, so I'm going to go back to my selection tool, kind of expand this. Whoops, undo, Control Z. Where are you? There we go. Grab that, make that a little bit bigger this way, a little bit bigger that way. Bring that down, double click back in there, maybe highlight this. See if I can go, 60 is not going to work, so let's try typing in maybe 50. Can I go 55? I'm getting a little bit too close to the edges for my comfort level. I want to leave a little bit of space there. Alright, so I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the text and the graphic. In the next video, I'm going to go over something specific, I call it like a vector outline, because right now everything that you see in black is just going to be engraved. So it's going to go down into the wood maybe like, I don't know, I'm guesstimating roughly around a 1/16 to an eighth of an inch, probably 1/16-ish. But there's something called vector outline, which pretty much uses like a cut, and it kind of traces the outline of all the shapes, which sometimes makes it pop a little bit more. So I'll talk about that in the next video.